All right,
Uh-oh,
Troy.
now we've got to behave.
We are live. How's it
Sweet.
going, man?
Well, to those who are listening, we just had a 20-minute disaster with trying to get connected on this thing called the internet, but we got to figure it out. So
We got it.
everything is going great. A little warm down
Technology.
here. Yeah, technology is great until it isn't, but hey, man, in the end of the day, most of it works pretty good. So off to the races. And it's
Off
been
to
a
the
while since we
races.
talked, although you and I have been yammering together. The crossbow you had those guys send me is really fun. That SWAT, I've never shot a crossbow till 3 weeks ago. Never pulled the trigger on one. And my son is already planning to head shoot pigs with it. I took him to shoot it last night. He goes, "Oh, Dad, he wants the big tough head. So he wants to put that on the front at like 350 grains and shoot one in the dome." And I said, "That's what they're for. That's why we have pigs."
Yeah, I guess for everybody that, starting off with that, yeah, we got Troy hooked up with my favorite crossbow, the SWAT X1. I'm glad you like it. I just got my uncle hooked up with one too.
Mm-hmm.
I got a couple of the different Killer Instinct bows up here, and he was over a couple weeks ago, and he's been looking for a new one. And so we ran through basically all of them, and
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you can't shoot the SWAT first. I'm like, just trust me. But we're gonna go through them all and kind of see what you like, and price points and all that type of stuff. So we shot the SWAT last, and he was just like, that one, that's the one. So
Yeah,
he liked
absolutely.
he liked it too. But yeah, I'm glad that's shooting well for you. I mean, I know you've been playing around with some broadhead flights. You're shooting the serious arrows, right? That's what you were running
No,
through there.
I found out. You and I were talking about this yesterday. The veins they put on the they put I don't remember what vein it is, but you warned me that you need the lower GPI series. So I ordered those,
Yep.
and the foot, it was Draggin, but it didn't feel like carbon on carbon Draggin. And I couldn't. I was out there, and I just stopped shooting them, and I kept shooting the hypervolts when I was zeroing and all that, and trying to figure out how not to cut my fingers off. And I just sat here in the garage one day, and I said, "Okay." I stripped one, but I left the feet. I just cut the veins off, and the feet were still on the shaft. I thought the
Yep.
veins were dragging, like the vein. Stuck it in there, and it gripped. And I went, "Oh." So I stripped it bare, and it slid like butter. So the feet on that particular vein, which
I think it was an
is
AAE
a oh
Max or
hell, I
something,
shipped them back.
wasn't
I
it?
sent them back. They're going to refletch them for me. It's what
I
is that
think
thing?
I think it was an AAE Max from the that's what I want to say at least, or
I don't
AAE
remember what it
Hybrid
was.
or something.
When I do a video on the thing, I'll talk about that. Make sure they get the right vein. So I shipped them back to Sirius. They're going to refletch them because I called Seth. I said, "Hey, bud, this thing's dragging." He was here this weekend and came to the house, and I showed him the crossbow, and we were dragging it in there, and he thought it was the height of the veins, and it was not. So he's got another vein that's narrower. And I know you shot the Q2I fusions.
Yep.
So what the deal was is this vein was kind of had a ridge like this up on it, and the Q2Is tend to be flat, and they're actually welded somehow together. That's the fusion thing. The foot is a different kind of plastic that's more compatible with more glues, from what I understand.
Okay.
So it's real flat. And I looked at the hyperbolts, and there's like the veins are real, like the foot is super thin. So that barrel, in defense of the Killer Instinct crossbow, is pretty small, which I think is good. It's not like a
Hmm.
big, it's not, you're not shooting down a toilet paper roll. You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Yep.
So it sounds like a problem, but I don't think it is. I think that means it's pretty precise. And man, it's been launching. I was impressed. It took me you had to get used to the whole feeling of the thing for about 5 shots. You just kind of go, oh. And I got it zeroed at 20 real fast, doing it the old fashioned way, which is you shoot a bolt, you put your point of aim back on the point of aim, and you start turning the knobs until it goes to the bolt,
Yep.
like a one shot zero with a rifle.
Yep.
and it started shooting down the middle. And it's been impressive. Like, doesn't make a lot of noise. It doesn't feel rattly.
Yep.
I just all the expectations I had. It's like the first time I rode in a helicopter. Which the first time I rode in a helicopter, I had an AR-15 with me, which really makes it great. They're smooth. Like you took off and it's like a skateboard, it's like skating on ice. It's just smooth. And I thought it would be more tick, 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 and it wasn't. So I've been shocked. And I've been really surprised with the broadheads out of that one. I've not shot another one. So everybody who's a crossbow guy, I haven't shot 15 different crossbows. So I got apparently launched to the front. But I haven't shot any open rail crossbows and had to mess with noctuning as much and all that. And you told me about that. You said this one's going to be pretty solid.
Yep.
The heaviest broadhead I've shot is 350.
Nice.
Yeah, I shot the tough head with like 125 grain insert in it, and it stayed on track. It just hit low.
Mm-hmm.
And that's nothing but a zero deal.
Yep.
You just you either change the speed ring or whatever. So it's been fun.
Very cool. Yeah, you can definitely get good broadhead flight with open rail, just traditional rail crossbows. The arrow setup matters a lot more. That SWAT barrel, like with what you're saying, being fairly small, and it's not that it's finicky. It's just you just got to know what it is. Like you are 360 degrees encapsulating that bolt and the fletching. So offsets in vein lengths, vein height, like you said, like you can't shoot blazers out of it. They're too tall.
Yeah.
But if you get the right setup, it still shoots better with well-tuned arrows. But
I got no doubt about that. I didn't mess with that yet.
But with whatever, just any arrow, because of that barrel, it doesn't let the bolt oscillate. It basically restricts it from bending. So when it's coming out with very
pretty clean,
very little flex. Yep. So,
well, I backed up to 40. I was 3 clicks right. So 3 clicks left, running down the middle of field points. And I just said, the hell with it. And I put 150 grain. I was shooting 100 grain field points. And I just put 150 grain single bevel, the ones that you just did a video on. And zip. I mean, it was like half, 3/4 of an inch low.
Yeah.
At 40, dead down the middle. And I was like, you got to check that crap. So I did it like 4 more times. Well, it was like that. There was no. And then I strapped on the Ranch Fairy 200, my single bevel head, and it shot in the same hole. And I can't figure that out yet.
The same hole
at 40, 150 and 200 grains of shooting.
Got it.
Inside of a beer can, easy. So I got to figure that one out because I'm a curious dude. I'll take the results, and I would go hunting with it right now with a 200 grain broadhead. I don't worry about it, but doesn't make sense yet. I'll figure it out.
Well, I'm looking forward to you playing with that more. I'm looking forward to some of the lab radar stuff.
Yeah, me too. I'm ready to. I can shoot. I'm probably just going to stretch it to 60 because that's what I've done with the vertical bow, and just duplicate the same data set across even because a lab radar only takes 5 inputs for distance. So if you go to 200 yards, you got to be 50 yards or whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter. But so if I started at 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, that's 5. And one of the tricks of a lab radar is you got to put the target at like 65.
Okay.
So it can't stop in the target.
Yep.
Or it skews the results. It's got to fly through 60. So that's not a big deal, but you just got to know that. The first time we did it, we put the target at the max distance, and we were getting these crazy numbers because it was shaking. And the lab radar was like, I don't know what that is. But it'll be after looking at the data set that you have, which is right here and in your video, which I think you should put a thumbnail of that up on your
you printed it?
podcast.
Nice. Yeah, we can share that here.
You're getting some of the questions and that I've gotten for 5 years since we posted 4 or 5 years since I started posting the downrange momentum and KE, and it's all the same. In fact, the results are duplicating what I found percentage wise.
As far as out of
And
the bow versus
you're
downrange.
just at launch. You're just at
Yep.
launch. It's going to get worse in a good way for the heavier arrows once I launch them 60. It's just going to be awesome because they're so
Let's
fast.
let's dive into that. So I guess for everybody watching, so Troy and I, like he was saying, we've been texting back and forth, and I got a couple YouTube comments that are right up Troy's alley, are right up a lot of the things that I've been doing on the crossbow side that I learned from Troy watching the Ranch Fairy YouTube channel. And there were ones where I was sitting there, I was like, okay, I'm about to type a really long response. And I'm like, nah, you know what? I told the one guy, I was like, I'll just do a video. I'm going to do a video on this because it's a good
Well, if
question
one
with a
person's
lot of
asking it,
meat.
1,000 people are wondering, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
And there's two of them, and there's one that is from a little longer ago that I said the exact same thing, and I just never got around to it. Then when this one popped up, I'm like, okay, this is now we got two that is money.
that
One's on
means there's a
arrows,
ton of
one's
people
on
thinking it or
broadheads.
wondering, right? It's fine. I actually get more content now from negative or neutral comments than I do the Yahoo comments.
Yeah. Yep.
Every negative comment or somebody asking, and there's a lot of people who are asking fair questions. They sound negative, but they're not. You can tell kind of by
Yep.
the tone.
Yep. For
But
sure.
they're wondering. And I go, okay, I'll do that. Because if they're asking, God only knows how many things. And I got 20,000 views on some video. Who knows how many other people just didn't say anything?
Yep.
And let's answer the question, right? So
I'll tell you
you
what,
have this data set that you did, and I pulled out 3 arrow masses, velocities, KEs, and momentums with pretty big jumps just to show it's easier to discuss it. You got really granular, which is fine. It's hard for people to walk through 20 grain changes when you can go
yeah.
100 grains and see the difference.
I'm gonna pull up that question real quick and just read it. I'm gonna share my screen. All right, so this question, hopefully everybody can see that okay. You should be able to. This is from a couple days ago by Don Wilson. So Don, and I'm pretty sure he's commented on a few videos. He's watched a decent amount of my stuff. I think I recognize that name, but his question was, "Hey, bud, I guess I just don't get it and never will. You got a crossbow that's supposed to shoot 430 feet per second, and you've absolutely killed it by shooting a 490 some grain out of it. That would be like buying a Corvette and putting a 4-cylinder motor in it, absolutely killing the performance. I just don't understand it." So that was the question from Don, and this was kind of the one that we'll start with this one on the arrow side of things. So I guess if you want to start, Troy, because I know you got that sheet up, and I had sent you these questions kind of beforehand, but why don't you kick us off on what Don's thinking of killing crossbow performance by increasing arrow weight and slowing the speed down?
Yeah, no. So Don, it's a fair question. We're not trying to light you up because it's a fair question.
Absolutely.
And it's not well explained in the vertical bow business has the same problem. I get a little pointed, so just chill, but we have a lot of people who are pretty good at blowing turkey calls and shooting 3D, but they don't know why the arrows fly or how they penetrate. They do not. They don't. They know they do. They don't know why, and they don't understand the performance of mass and velocity. Everybody just thinks the faster you can go, the better off you are. And I won't go too far down the aerodynamic drag rabbit hole, but there is actually an argument for moderate speed and high mass to reduce drag. That's a totally different conversation. So from Matt's data set, you might want to flip that up on the screen just so everybody kind of is oriented to how much data you did, because you did a great job and really pulled a lot of data.
Yeah,
some of y'all probably won't be able to read it because it's pretty small, but this is the Vital X, so it's fast, and he pulled arrow weights by the grain and the velocity and the KE and the momentum. So that's the graph. Go watch his video on that, and it explains it in greater depth. And then I hope to do the lab radar and duplicate this, but I'll have it down at 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And that's really, really telling. So this is at the bow.
Yep.
So I pulled the lightest arrow. That is a 392 grain arrow going 414 feet per second out of your bow.
Yep.
KE is 149, which is a pile of KE, by the way. It's a double of the vertical bow. It's unbelievable, actually. And the slug momentum is 0.72, which is also a massive amount of KE or momentum. That's a 700 grain arrow out of a vertical bow. If you could make a vertical bow go 414, this would all be the same, but we can't do that. Then I pulled 492 just to make an even I added 100 grains and pulled that from this data set. That is a 25, so you got to pay attention to the math. And I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence. You can get lost in this. I'm trying to be as simple as I can about it because it just gets to be mind-numbing, and I admit that because I do this a lot. So it's a 25% increase in mass, okay? But the speed goes from 414 to 380, and that's only an 8% reduction in speed. So you've increased the mass 25% for an 8% reduction in speed. The KE on that 380 grain bolt going 492 is 157. So you gained about 8% there in KE. But the momentum went up 13.8. And that's a lot. So the biggest challenge here is, and the misunderstanding is, everybody believes this is a 1-to-1 ratio. You add a grain, you lose speed at an absolutely equivalent rate. And that's not true at all. We already saw that. So again, the numbers on that were, we increased the mass by 25%, but we only lost 8% in speed. And that's why the momentum jumps so high, because it is mass times velocity.
Yep.
Okay. Kinetic energy, and you really got to kind of think about this. It is 1/2 mass. So you're really only getting 12% out of that times velocity squared. So if it was a 25% gain, but you're cutting it in half, that's about 12.5, right? We had an 8% decrease in velocity squared, and that's why the KE goes up a little bit, but tends to be pretty flat. This is some super deep science stuff. So I pulled the next one. I added another 100 grains. 592 grains. We're now up 200 grains, by the way. That's awesome. 492 to 592 is a 20% increase in mass. The speed goes from 380 to 344, almost a dead equivalent amount. It's a 10% reduction in speed, 20% increase in mass. The KE is flat. It's basically the same. But the momentum again jumps 9.7%. So you're increasing torque on your car.
Exactly.
You're not replacing the motor.
Exactly.
There's a misunderstanding of how the math works. And like I said, Mr. Wilson, we're not smacking you around. Your comment is awesome, and there's a million people wondering the same damn thing because freaking crossbows are fast. They should be the golden goose. If speed is the only thing that matters, they should be the golden goose. But it's not an engine size thing. The engine is the crossbow. It is a fixed kinetic energy tool. The bolt decides how much push it's got, right? This is a horsepower at the target thing. To use a car analogy, it's how much push you've got when it gets there. And we jumped. If you decided to shoot a 592 grain bolt, reduce your speed 18%, your momentum would go up 25.4%. And momentum in physics is what keeps things moving.
Yep.
It is the shove, and it just keeps shoving. So the less momentum you have, the less ability to keep traveling forward. And the best way to use momentum is to have something on the front of your arrow that doesn't require a lot of push. This is why I think I know this from the air gun guys, because I have one of them PCP guns that shoots arrows up there. They were struggling. It's a 300 foot per second deal. It's not super fast like y'all are. They were struggling with mechanicals.
Okay.
And that thing shoots. You actually put the bolt over a barrel. It blows at the knock. Or excuse me, it blows at the insert.
Okay.
It launches it from the front.
Interesting.
And it slides down the rail. So normally a pellet would be inside the barrel. This barrel's really tiny. You slide the shaft over it. It's got a little catch in the back, kind of like the SWAT does. And when you shoot it, it's blowing against the insert. But it can't oscillate. It's on that tube.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we did that, it shot some of the broadheads crazy. But they were struggling with mechanical as well. So that is, I can't prove it. So I'm going to keep exploring this, but
I'm glad you
Newton comes into play there, and I think Newton's our problem with mechanical broadheads.
I was gonna say I'm glad. I was thinking of Don's comment similar of setting up a car and how you had mentioned torque, right? So there's with any car or whatever, and this is kind of how whoever is listening to this, like you can tailor these setups however you want, just like you can tailor a car.
Absolutely.
If you're drag racing and all you want is as fast as you can go over the unlimited distance you want, by all means do it. But if what is considered fast, or there's other aspects of performance, I guess, right? Like you said it, there is speed, but there's momentum, there's kinetic energy, whichever number you want to use. And I agree with you, Troy. Momentum is more important. Accuracy too, right? Like I have found more forward of center, you're getting less wind drift, you're getting having that mass up front pulling the arrow toward the target, as opposed to mass more evenly distributed, attributes to more accuracy. I mean, that's a performance factor, just like different things with a car, just like traction, or like what you said, torque, or
I want to do something about the
FOC.
I did this on a podcast out of the blue the other day, and I went, oh God, I should have been saying this forever. So I'm going to use it doesn't matter what bolt it is. All right. So I've got a bolt because it's short and it's easier to have on the screen. This is one of the Phoenix bolts that I was shooting on the air gun. I had to actually grind down the back of it to make it fit in the little notcher. So and then it launches off. It actually blows right behind the insert and takes off. It's really kind of fun to shoot. Totally silent, no recoil. It just goes whoop, boom. But anyway, you got to have a charger for it. It's a pain in the ass. Don't buy one of those things. Okay, buy a crossbow. It's way faster. We've all probably seen a Western. And in Westerns, they always have the classic cliche, rooster, weather vane, or a horror movie. They're good about this too. And a weather vane is very sensitive. It's always a low wind situation of things just barely move. They want to hear the creaking as much as anything, right? For the cinematography. That thing is balanced in the dead center. That is a great way to think about 0% forward to center. So what that means in arrows is neither end dominates. They've got an equal amount of capability to steer. And you do not want to steer anything. You want the whole system to fly. We may have to talk about that again, because god dang, that could take forever. So when it's in the middle, and let's put this ridiculous thing on. That's a 500 grain 3-blade broadhead that somebody sent me. It's ridiculous. I shot a pig with this that bounced off because it's so big. It's like inch and a half wide. It's ridiculous. Okay, let's. Oh, that's ridiculous. I can't do that. Something simple. Okay, this is more your style. This is your buddy.
Yeah, that is my buddy.
Okay, now we have fletching on the back, and despite the way you think it works by lift, not drag. But just go with whatever you think, however you think it works. We just added another wing on the front. When we balance this thing in the dead center, both ends of the arrow can manipulate arrow flight. And it's very unstable. You can get them to stabilize, but overall, should you make a mistake, you pull the shot, twitch a little bit with your crossbow, whatever, the vanes and the point, nothing's ruling the roost. It's like a teeter-totter with two kids. They're the same weight. It just balances out. That doesn't mean your arrow flight's good. That's a bad thing in arrows, okay? When you put 110 grain insert in here like this one has and 150 grain point, you take the balance this direction and it makes the back of the arrow have more leverage.
Yep.
It launches pulling because there's a lot of mass up here, which pulls the shaft into the fletchings. But the fletchings are back, and this arm is very long. And the longer you can make it, the more this thing can stabilize, and this guy can't fight with it. It doesn't have any leverage. This guy's got a short crowbar trying to pull a nail, and you got a 3-foot crowbar back here trying to pull a nail, and you just go, whoop.
Yep.
I have a 6.5 foot piece of pipe, and we were pulling my shocks on my F-250, and my 6-year-old was turning the bolts because he had a 6-foot piece of pipe on a wrench.
That's what
he was like, "This is great."
I was just gonna say it's like a breaker bar. It's like adding a breaker bar. Yep.
Right. So then how do I do this? Hang on. The one thing that no one talks about is impact. In the vertical bow world, it's a terribly overlooked conversation. Certainly in the crossbow world, it is because it's lost in all the speed stuff with the 500 foot per second crossbows and all that. And I'm not ratting on the crossbow guys. Y'all are just so fast. It's really strong in the crossbow world because the vertical bows can't, if you get 20 feet per second, you've really gone fast. You're not getting 100 feet per second like this thing, right? So, yeah, that's almost, it was like 85. At impact, you are in the same situation with the old balance beam. If the weight is forward, it's going to drive and be real. This section of the arrow, this is a totally different thing. So it's flying. You have fletchings with leverage. Should you pull it a little bit or it's wiggling, it tends to settle because it's got more leverage. At impact, this piece of the shaft is super stiff. It flexes here. This piece is like a rock. Okay. However, when you pull the forward to center back, it's going to flex in the middle. Guess what happens if it hits and bends? The broadhead just changed direction. They're hauling ass. This is happening at, milliseconds. And all of a sudden it redirects and the shaft goes like that and it stops. Because if the knock in, right, takes off, it hits, say it hits a rib a little odd, quartering away, flexes a little bit, all of a sudden the knock-in takes off and it just kills your penetration if it's balanced in the middle. Because it's balanced here. It's way back here, it's got all kind of leverage. And I'm pretty certain that's the mechanical thing. I'm pretty certain with the mechanicals that the blades rarely open perfectly square. One opens, the other one's not quite open. Remember, it's going 400 feet per second. So when it does open finally, the other one's open. I mean, the whole shaft's doing that.
Yep.
I need to catch it on high speed. I need to get Greg down from the hunting public and get the high speed camera out and do that.
Oh, that'd be
That would
sweet.
verify it. Yeah.
So yeah, Don, I think really the key to this is just like a car. It's just how you want to set it up. If you want
Yep.
speed, go for it. If you want to
Yep.
set your car up for more torque or that kind of stuff, that's kind of how this is. Like crossbows, I mean, they go so fast. Like you said, 515 is the fastest one out there now.
Good Lord,
400,
that is ridiculous.
the mid or between basically 400 and 430 is kind of like, or even 450. I mean, that's like par for the course. So
Huh.
the amount of energy that you have at your disposal to add weight, increase momentum, increase penetration, make a more stable arrow, and still have
Mm-hmm.
a just rocket ship of a freaking
Yeah.
projectile going. To us, I just think it's a huge advantage as far as flight, as far as performance, as far as lethality. It's harnessing all that energy, and honestly, too, like crossbows have a lot of wasted energy. So if you
I think that's why my 50 grain difference in broadheads is not mattering at 40.
it could be because I mean they're not because they're high draw weight, short power stroke, like they're just not
Mm-hmm.
efficient. So the more you can put into that arrow, you're honestly you're harnessing more of that crossbow's energy
I think that's it.
by
I just don't know
adding
how to
weight.
measure it. I know for a fact this is a vertical bow problem because at 800 grains, my bow pushes back. So that means up to that point, it was able to overwhelm the arrow.
Okay.
But when I went up to 800, the heaviest arrow I've ever hunted was 1,035, and I shot 3 pigs with it. It works. But Buddy is critical on distance. Thank God for deer feeders 17 yards away. That helps a lot. You wouldn't want to go stalk them with 1,000 grains unless you're elk hunting. But at 800, you literally hit the release and you feel the bow go like it's not recoil, but it's weird in the hand.
Okay.
Like it goes shove, and you're like, what the hell was that? And I think you've overwhelmed it. I think you finally found the point where, because it's 7, my big boy hunting arrows that I hunt with for serious are 715, and they just feel real solid.
Yep.
But at 800, 850, and 2,000 grains pushes back a lot too. We did that. Put a tungsten rod inside of an arrow. It was hilarious. That thing just went boop. But to your point on the crossbows, I think there's a ton of wasted potential, is what I think it is. I think it's wasted potential for penetration for on the meat, because I had an email this morning with a guy who was trying to make me make friends with about half the archery community. He was being nice, but he was kind of accusing me of smacking around on everybody and not wanting to get along. And I just kind of got a little wound up about it. I need to do a video on this. When you change your perspective to how do I get it through them, and I don't care about the rest of it, what's going through them every time, and no matter what it hits with the highest percentage, when that's your concern, I don't fit in. I'm weird. I'd say some crazy crap. I got the Billy Bob teeth. I like to have some fun, and I do absolutely jab at people. That's my fault. Okay. If I was nice, it wouldn't be any different. But if I painted doorknobs, it wouldn't be any different. Somebody would be bitching at me about my lacquer mix. But probably 2 years, I started doing this crap. I kind of started understanding why. And then one day, like, I was just sitting like at work, and I went, that's why everybody hates Ed. That's why everybody hates the Natal study. All he was trying to figure out was what penetrator works the most. We'll get it there. Whether that means you can only shoot 30 yards or whatever. He wasn't concerned with that. He wanted to know in the highest percentage of situations what will work. And then he said, we'll figure out how to deliver it. And when I flip that switch, it's a perspective that I don't know a lot of people have in the big archery world. Certainly not in the crossbow world's coming around to this stuff. And I'm not trying to smack on anybody. I just don't think like everybody anymore. I want it to go through their ass. And if that means I got to open up my pin gaps, but it's going to blow through them. And if I want to take a quartering in shot and shoot him in the shoulder and break the thing and still pass through, I'm shooting that setup.
Yep.
And then I'll figure out how to deliver it.
And on the crossbow side of things, I mean, with that, like a speed ring style scope, I mean, you're not 415 versus 380 and shooting out to
I think
whatever.
the sweet spot in these things is 350. Slow it down a little bit, reduce the drag in the air, reduce the drag at the target. And that's the drag equation is relatively complex with a lot of cosines and crap, but the glaring one in it is velocity squared. So for every foot per second you go faster, which generally means we're reducing the mass to do it. If you had an adjustable crossbow, like a compound, and you started out at 50 and you went to 70, that's a different discussion. Because the bow wasn't fixed. You weren't strong enough to full 50. You work up to 55. You're gaining, even if you leave the arrow the same, you're still gaining the velocity. But the crossbows are fixed. So the speed increases the drag times velocity squared, and we are giving up mass to go faster. If you looked at, I wrote everything down by hand, but if you looked at this backwards and you said, and you only had 600 grain bolts for some reason, like in the old, I'm old, I'm pre-carbon. I used to shoot a 2117 and 145 grain Bear Razorhead. Dude, that thing was 600 grains if it was an ounce. We didn't know. we thought 240 was fast.
Yeah.
Right? Just screaming fast. We had overdraws. It was retarded.
Yep.
I'm not supposed to say retarded anymore, but I'm saying it. It was retarded. But we didn't have anything faster. And they were pretty slow, but we didn't leave arrows and stuff. So once again, back to the drag equation, in the air, which is the most commonly studied drag substrate they shoot through, missiles, bullets, that kind of thing, the fast stuff, Mach 10 stuff, rail guns. The air is a problem. And the faster they go, the more they drag and the worse the ballistics become. Literally pushing against the atmosphere. In archery and crossbows, we want to go faster, but we take the mass out. So you're giving on one side and getting on the other. You're going nowhere, energy-wise. It's algebra. Took from one side, you added to the other, right? So you shoveled water out of your boat and you shoveled it into my boat. And I shovel it out of my boat back into your boat. Woo! Nobody's going anywhere. We're just wet. It's too much to think about. What are we doing?
Should we segue? Hopefully, Ron, hopefully that helped you. I mean, just like you were using the car analogy, think of it as we didn't.
Pork.
Yep. Pork. We did not change, changing your analogy of like kind of changing the motor from a V8 to a 4-cylinder. That'd be like taking a crossbow and going from 180-pound draw to 60-pound draw, right?
That's absolutely accurate. That's the engine.
Yep, you're changing the engine. You're changing max output from the device. What we are more talking about is like setup, car setup. Drag racing's one thing. Racing around a Formula One type of track is a totally different car setup where you're going to want different.
Tractors will pull you out of anything because they go slow and just torque it right out. Right.
Yep. So kind of going on your car analogy, those are kind of some of the other performance aspects of, an arrow setup that you can utilize and you can tailor how you want to, honestly increase performance when it comes to comes to
It's
your
really a great
accuracy
comment.
and
I
your
like the way
game.
he put it. I like the way he put it because it's something we can all relate to.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yep.
know, Dr. Ed does a good job of that, describing like angle of attack. And he said it's like a wheelchair ramp. In the world of physics, and this is where the idiots come out, there's a bunch of physics guys will come out and say, I'm a engineer, and that's not an accurate representation. We're trying to help the rest of the world understand that a wheelchair going up a wheelchair ramp is a lot easier than doing a 45. And the 45 would be cheaper than 3 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
But it'd be a pain in the ass in the wheelchair and you'd flip over all the time. He's just trying to make everybody understand the ease of use. And in this case, Don, you did a great job with the engine thing. Matt, you really connected the dots. It's like kind of like my drawway thing, but if you went from a crossbow 5 years ago that was 340, and now you go to a 500 foot per second, you change the motor.
Yep.
And then you can add the torque. I'd love to get a 500 footer and put a 600 grain arrow. You could shoot through an elephant with the thing. It would be awesome. I mean, that would be awesome. The momentum would be off the damn charts. Shoving some giant steel rod down range, and you'd have good with a bow that fast. You'd probably be shooting 400 feet per second. It would have great ballistics, right? The drop wouldn't be terrible, and you just shoot a deer. Oh, doesn't matter. Aim at the heart, in the butt,
deer behind
front.
the tree.
Yeah, shoot through, kill a tree, kill 2 deer. It'll be like when last year when Zach was with me, we were at the ranch and the hunting public guys were down, and one of my deer feeders is a tripod, and the pigs have dug a perfect circle the width of the legs. It's just a pit. We're sitting there, we hear them coming, and it was nighttime. I have a light on it. The whole pit fills with pigs. Like this, just solid pigs. There's like 20 of them. And he goes, "What do I do?" And I'm like, "Well, shoot the broadside one." He goes, "What about the ones behind him?" I was like, "Yeah, shoot through them too." He goes, "Oh yeah," Ended up killing 2 with 1 arrow because we were elevated. It went downhill, but
Yep.
man, with a crossbow on the ground, you could have shot through that whole pile of pigs. It would have gone out the other side. Just you'd never know. You've been skinning for hours. That's what they're for. They're meant to be shot. I hope my pig comes out tonight. That damn thing has been driving me crazy, but we'll get him.
You want to pivot to the broadhead related question? I'm gonna pull it up on my screen here. So the other comment,
that's your graph. There you go.
There we go. So this one, like I said, let me move my mouse there. This was from a little while ago, and I had meant to do kind of a similar thing to Don's question on this one. This one is from Hunter Dan 2002. And his question or comment was, I don't understand the obsession with penetration when using a crossbow that has plenty of energy to easily pass through any deer at normal hunting ranges. Energy used to bury the arrow in the deer is wasted energy. And I don't know if maybe he meant like bury the arrow out the other side.
Yeah, I think
of the
he meant
deer.
into the
I think
ground.
that's kind of like
I don't
shooting
think
it.
That's accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he
That's
meant
fair.
like burying
Into
it
the
down in
ground.
the ground. Bigger holes equals faster, shorter recoveries in my experience.
Fair. I can't argue with that. I don't know. I haven't hunted with that guy. But the air gun guy said that they were struggling big time with the mechanical broadheads. So bigger holes means he's a mechanical guy. I don't know what your experience was. I don't know why was it okay? Did they explode? Did they work okay? Did you have some weird results? Did it work pretty good, or was it kind of weird?
As far as mechanicals with a crossbow?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So my experience, and this was one thing I had written down, and this is where I think, kind of to Dan's point, I think structural integrity is a big limiting factor here.
That would be my concern. The velocity is so high.
Exactly. So
my concern would be the blades flying off.
So if the broadhead, I don't think or I'm sorry, this one's not. Yeah, Hunter Dan was his name. So Dan, I think let's just assume that if the broadhead were to hold together, that you've got enough energy, and I mean, like he's saying, and you have a ton, like you can push a
Hmm.
big thing
You
through
do.
there, but
Hmm.
I haven't seen, with the exception of like, and I've got kind of a story I can tell on the Sever too, but that to me is kind of like the bar as far as mechanicals goes from what I have seen.
Hmm.
But I haven't seen many mechanicals really like beefing up their structure. So now you've got a mechanical that is almost the same as what you're shooting out of a compound bow that has whatever half ish the kinetic energy momentum.
Yeah,
Would
it
I be
has
fair saying
two
that?
thirds.
Two
Two thirds.
thirds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
So two thirds that. And now you're going to shove it even faster. And
Oh no, KE, it's half. Yeah, yeah, you're right. Okay, on KE, it's half. Correct. Okay, follow along. Sorry, I
and
thought you were talking about momentum. Hmm.
no, and what I'm kind of thinking of is like I think it's Newton's third law. Like every action has an equal and opposite
There's an opposite and
reaction.
equal reaction. Correct.
So what you're going to that the amount of energy you've got in that arrow when your broadhead hits, it is then going to experience that amount of energy from that animal. And that's maybe
Coming
not
back at it.
maybe not apples to apples on like soft tissue, but especially if you're going to hit if you're going through some like a shoulder blade or something. And
Hmm.
I question whether or not um, that those broadheads can hold up, especially when blades are moving. Like that's a dynamic thing. They're sliding back and boom with that amount of
Hmm.
amount of force. And so that is some of the things that I saw. So I saw, and this was, um, even a little while ago, as far as like broadhead designs and stuff. I used to shoot a lot of I've got a whole pile of them over there. Just the Rage. I shot the 2-inch, two blade chisel tip ones. They were 100 grains. And right where I've even got here, I'm going to grab one quick because I've got just a pile of them sitting here. Where the blades were unsupported, a lot of times those would be gone. So you'd be,
No kidding.
yep. So you would shoot through, you might get through and you might find your animal, but um this stuff would just it would shear off like where it was unsupported, these long tails. And this is the 2-inch version, so they had another one that was like a
Yeah, the big one.
2.3, so that tail was even
Hmm.
longer. So you were not getting 2 inches or 2.3 inches going through that deer. You were getting inch and a quarter, inch and a half, whatever it is, wherever it would break. It wasn't necessarily right there all the time, but you would come back and your broadhead would be that, and it'd be all bent
I've
up and
got a
all
friend who
mangled.
makes rages for people. He breaks the blades off like that.
Just on purpose.
He on purpose. Yeah, he hand
Yeah.
sharpens every one of them. He charges people for them. He snaps them off, and he makes them. He's just making them narrower so they penetrate better. He's taking like a quarter inch off of them or whatever, so they're inch and three quarters, inch and a half. Somebody's going to come up with the right mechanical broadhead one of these days, and it'll be the best mechanical. It's not out there yet. The Sever might be close, but
I
I'm
feel
with you
like
on
Sever
the.
is
Oh,
close.
I haven't shot one. I messed with them. The first thing I did, somebody gave me a Sever. They claim that it will go by the bone. I took two pieces of PVC. I shoved the Sever and it locked open, and both blades hit the bone. And I went, okay, well, that's not exactly what they advertised. The videos I saw on their channel showed one bone, and the blades go like this. Well, there's 13 ribs. Go count them next time you shoot a deer. They're
Yep.
everywhere.
So
So
even
I'm not
even if
knocking the Sever. It just, it's not. It's still got the same mechanical things that mechanicals have.
yeah,
Do do they redirect like a long arrow does? Have you had any redirects?
on compound, yes. On crossbows, I did not. I mean, I feel like it was, or
Okay, I think they're
maybe
too
maybe
short.
I did. Too short. They're going really quick on my compound. That's honestly, Troy, how I found your channel. Was I was shooting
Mm.
this same thing out of my compound bow, had a perfect quartering away shot, 20 yards on a deer, and it just ran like my arrow was sticking out. I don't know. It got maybe a third penetration, but it was almost like parallel to its body when I took that
Hmm.
shot. it hit and just ran right up, was a single lung. We tracked for freaking ever and never, never got him.
Yeah.
That's where I made the switch. I have seen more on the crossbow side of things, even on ones that I did recover, was broken blades, or just, and this was again a little bit longer ago when crossbows weren't producing as much energy, but if you did hit a shoulder, um,
Stop.
you still weren't getting
Yeah.
all the way through it. And my buddy just had, so he's got a Vital X, so 405 feet per second advertised speed, and we even built up some arrows, like we did all that stuff, and he was not wanting to mess a little bit with some of the fixed blade type of stuff, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. I'm like, the Sever, from everything that I have seen, is the best mechanical. So
Mm-hmm.
he got some of those, and at 40 yards he shot at a doe, Michigan whitetail doe. So I mean, they're good sized deer, but they're not elk, they're not, moose, they're
Mm-hmm.
not anything like that. They're not super heavy boned. 40-yard shot. He, I think, just misjudged it a little bit. So he was a little high and hit shoulder blade, and it didn't get through. It was just the big thwack. Um, the usual, you're tracking little
Yeah.
blood type of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
that's, I know that they've got the energy to shove a big cutting diameter through ribs, through soft tissue, through that kind of stuff, but I don't know if they've got it to get through heavy bone or shoulder blade type of bone. And I really don't think, I mean, with how thin these blades are on these mechanicals, and I know this isn't, um, I know there's different ones out there, but I just don't think they've got the nuts to them to be able to hold up to that. And I know
Mm-hmm.
you talk a lot about edge retention. I kind of think the same thing, even on like a perfect shot, with these things deploying that kind of steeper, um, blade angle.
They chop into ribs. They don't cut them as well. They chop into them.
And that maybe is a question, I'll ask you, as far as, let's just say, for like a guy like Dan, he's not concerned with heavy bone. He's more he's hitting vitals, but
Uh-huh.
he's going to shove a big cutting diameter with a steep blade angle or steeper blade angle through those ribs. Would you say, is it better to have something where those blades get kind of chewed up, kind of dulled,
No.
and you've got a bigger cutting diameter versus something smaller like a fixed blade, that smaller cutting diameter, but they maintain that edge?
So that's a medical question, not a opinionated bow hunting question.
Okay.
There's a there is a thing that is a physiologic fact called the clotting cascade. You can look this up on the internet for those of you that are interested in actually finding out how stuff works. But I'll do a real simple analogy. If you when you cut yourself shaving or on a razor blade or something that's really sharp, you rarely feel it, and it never stops. You just bleed and bleed and bleed. I tear myself up a lot because I'm a car mechanic, not a good one. And I tend to, if I'm bleeding, the project's going well. If I'm not bleeding, I'm probably screwed up and the wheels are going to fly off. When I shred my hand on stuff, it tends to just push on it, and the meat tends to lay over it. It tends to not bleed as fast. But you just slice yourself with a razor blade, cut your face shaving, and it's like 10 minutes, and you're still like, come on, bro, stop this. So the clotting cascade is a combination of enzymes floating around in your blood. And this is going to be super simplistic. But when there is damage and something's cut off, your body says, hey, send the enzymes, prothrombin and thrombin, and they are clotting mechanisms. When you've killed a deer and you shot it through the lungs and you split the sternum and there's those big lumps of blood in there, it's all like webby. That's the prothrombin and thrombin doing its thing, trying to make a mesh to stop the blood. It's way too late. It's coagulation. The cleaner the cut on all the internal organs behaves like that cut in your finger with a razor blade. because the enzymes don't have anything to hang on to. It takes longer for them to build up. So they catch on the sides and they start to build and say, and they make a web and more stuff catches and eventually closes it off.
Okay.
When it's ripped with a dull edge, and dull edges, arteries may roll over the blades. Arteries are very durable. They're actually semi-muscular. So they could roll over. You didn't cut them. So that's not helping you. But it's like cutting a piece of PVC with PVC cutters or cutting it with a hacksaw. When you hacksaw them, you got all those edges on it. Those chemicals in your blood can hang on to that and start sealing it off. So if you hit one little back, like rear lung, no real big arteries and veins back there because everything's decreasing in size as you go back, still lethal. Those little arteries and stuff have ability to seal up and they can go a little further. Blood trails reduced, all that stuff. So that's the science side of really sharp broadheads that really can maintain. So the second piece is as important as the first.
Okay.
You can take those mechanicals, put them on a strop, and make them absolutely terrifying. But after impacting, the impact hair, should there be mud like an elk or pigs, dirt's on deer, rib cage, meat, how sharp is it once it passes through the first thorax? Then it's into the killing area. Hitting the thorax don't kill nothing. If the arrow penetrates 2 inches and bounces out, they're fine. Their friends do that to them. They horn each other and kick each other all the time. Coyotes chase them around. They get chewed on a little bit through their lives. Deer do. You just don't know it. So that's the reason why you want something razor sharp that stays razor sharp. You need to stop worrying about opening the holes up, how big the entry and exit holes are, and what it does between the ribs and how sharp it is. That's your tracking distance.
And
because of this clotting cascade.
When you think about, mechanicals, and I'm just going to keep using this as the example, is it so when we think about that edge retention and keeping it sharp, are some of the limitations, and I'm maybe making this kind of where I'm forming this question where I think my assumptions are, is it both blade angle, blade thickness, and steel quality? Okay.
Yeah, the material's terrible, first of all. And then it's just plate stainless that they punch out on a big press. And then the sharpness is usually okay on the ones I played with. It's just not great. It's not awesome. You could make them awesome. You could actually hand sharpen them. And then the blade angle is the biggest problem. So classically, when you cut stuff with a knife, you cut stuff like this. You don't chop down on it. If you're trying to break stuff, yes. But classically, you take the knife at about an angle like that. Amazingly, that's an angle of a really good broadhead. You put it against the meat and you pull it. And you slice the meat. Mechanical broadhead angle of attack is so steep that they're coming in like this, and they're actually chopping into the ribs. If it hits, God, I wish I had my phone. I got a video coming up on this. If it hits at a quartering angle, one of the blades is going to deploy before the other.
Yep.
It's just a fact. And if you don't believe me, go get your mechanical, get a piece and get a pool noodle or something, put it at a 45-degree angle and shove it in. And watch it. The blade that's on the outside off the meat will just sit there. And the other one's trying to deploy. That's leverage against the bolt, making the knock kick away from it. And then the other blade opens finally. And then it kicks the other direction. When it works, that's why you get the 4-inch cuts. I've had that happen. I've had the 4-inch wide cut and about 10 inches of penetration. And brother, ain't nothing bleeds like that. It is amazing. But it doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen often enough to rely on it, right? When it does, it's like nothing on earth. There's blood everywhere, sprayed on the trees. It's kick ass.
Yep.
And it doesn't happen for the next 3 times. That, reduces your efficiency.
And like for this individual Dan, I mean, like if you've had good luck, you don't have to
Keep doing it.
change. You can,
No,
yeah, keep doing it. Like we're sharing our experience or just kind of some of the things that I think could could potentially rear their ugly head with mechanical, especially pushing them at the speeds, at the energy that a crossbow can. But if you're having good luck, if you're hitting deer where they need to be and you don't want to fix what isn't broken, then I mean, by all means, don't do it.
well, I
Um,
tell people that all the time on, people ask me about setups and said, hey, I've shot the last 10 deer with a mechanical and it's been fine. And I'm like, okay, you don't need me. If you do call, I wouldn't tell you to change. Your confidence is there. You think it works. It's
yep.
worked. You've got some reps. But if you shot one deer with a mechanical broadhead, that's a terrible sample size. You need to shoot 10. And then you can talk to us.
I
That's one of the advantages of um, turning our ranch into a test lab. I've set up the same distance on the same kind of animal, and generally we shoot them between 100 and 160 pounds. Most of them are that size. We don't kill a lot of big ones because they're smart. It's just like hunting big whitetails. You don't see the big ones very often. And there's a bunch of little turds. They're stupid. They're fun to catch by hand if you can run that fast. But we kill a lot of pigs between 100 and 160 pounds. They're at the same distance. It is a live hunting situation, and it's repeatable. So it gives me some control. I'm going to start doing it with a crossbow. It gives me some control over the variables. And then the variable is, can I shoot? And did they move? And from those two variables, you take arrow platforms and you shoot them a bunch. And I'll give you an example. I shot a pig that weighed 220 with the last time I shot a mechanical was a Schwacker, and I shot it right above the elbow, did not hit the humerus, perfect, and it stopped. It literally stopped. He ran by the deer feeder leg, it hit the deer feeder leg and flew out of it. And the broadhead was bent. That may have been from hitting the leg, but it went in about 4 inches, 3 inches. He was fine. His friends definitely chewed him up worse than that. And this is when I was just not convinced. I had a 670 grain arrow with a single bevel on it, but it looked so slow. This is 2015. I was like, that thing is so slow. It's never going to work. I can run faster than that thing goes. I mean, it looked horrible in the air. Well, I said, okay, fine. 2 weeks later, I went back, same pig, same feeder. That never happens. Walks out in front of me, and I shoot him, and the fletchings are inside of him. And he runs, and I see dust. He went 60 yards. And I went, okay. And that's when I realized, hey, man, I've got all these pigs. There's no laws. There's no season. You can hunt them at night. And I can set them up at the same distance. Why don't I just do what Ed did on pigs?
Yep.
Because they're not huge either. One of the bitches on Ed is, well, I don't shoot buffalo. I'll just hunt deer. So buffaloes are big. And that doesn't apply to me because they're buffaloes. So to the person who's thinking that, there's the read through Ed's study, and that's your sticking point. The buffaloes offer something that will stop the arrows. This is a pretty deep thought until you think about it. Pass-throughs tell us nothing. But when you take a 10% arrow, a 15% FOC arrow, a 20%, a 30%, and shoot them into a buffalo, and half of them stop, you can measure that.
Mm-hmm.
So if we duplicated this on deer, you'd have so many pass-throughs, you can't measure any. So that's why he used the huge animals, not to mention no season. There's a crap load of them in Australia. Nobody cares. You can feed them to the crocs, right? I mean, you can get rid of them, throw them in the river, the damn crocs will eat them. So that's why you want to use huge animals to see if it penetrates 3 inches further or a half or a foot. But you can't measure it when it just keeps zipping through. So that's why the huge animals are the deal. And then my deal with the pigs is they're smaller, they're more like North American game. I have access. I don't live in Australia,
Yep.
so I'm just doing what I can with what I got, and I'm fortunate to have a place to go. So I decided to turn it into a test lab.
And all
And
of
now we
that.
got to get Thomas. Now we got to get Thomas to shoot one of these in the head sideways and just. I think it's going to go all the way through it. I think it's going to go through the head and disappear in the woods.
That'll be awesome. And I was just gonna say, a lot of what you preach and have have kind of proven is that everybody thinks of, I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of people think of arrow setups, right, as how is it going to perform when I hit the perfect spot? And everything that you and Ed and others have kind of, informed people on is like, okay, well, what happens when it doesn't? Because especially deer, I'm mainly talking
They
to deer
jump all over
hunters
the
here.
place, and
They jump, they
people get
move,
nervous. Yeah.
they're at a
Mm-hmm.
different angle than you think.
Mm-hmm.
All that type of stuff. I mean, I've hit plenty of shoulder blades and had shots that just didn't work. Deer twisted, they wheeled, they ducked, they did all that type of
Mm-hmm.
thing. So a lot of, when you talk about Ed's study, or people saying like, I'm not shooting buffalo. It's like, we get that, but what you're trying to say, what Ed is showing you is like a solution to when you don't hit where you need to, or where you were aiming, or where you intended to
And it
hit.
may not be you. You might have put the arrow there and the deer moved.
Exactly. Your shot might have been absolutely perfect, and
Yep.
it moved, it ducked, it took a step, it twisted, it did one thing, and now you're not just hitting through ribs, you're hitting femurs, you're hitting shoulder blades, you're hitting those type of things, giving you a better chance to get through that, not only get through it, but keep your broadhead, keep your blades, keep your edges, your sharpness, all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff, keep all that intact so that
Yep.
you hopefully can
You're
recover.
more lethal.
You're more lethal. Yep.
If you sit down with Ed, which I was just with him a month ago, we got to BS for 2 days. It was great. He's super cool. And he's really, really humble. If there's anybody on the earth who should stand on his soapbox and scream at everybody and say, I killed 2 rhinos with a longbow, suck it, right? It's him. If you want to do the pecker measuring contest or whatever, he can say, okay, well, 2 rhinos, when you get there, call me. He would never do that. He rarely talks about the rhinos. We had to kind of pull it out of it. But when you talk to Ed, he will say, listen, none of this matters when everything goes right. He'll say this, I've just never been that good. He's like the greatest guy. And I've called him every once in a while I call him and say, hey, I was thinking about are getting a little faster. I think we've kind of hit a threshold. I don't know what they're going to do to make them go faster, but the 330 or 40 feet per second bows are out there, supposedly on Mars. Got it. They're a little faster. I said, Ed, this is one of the most profound things he said to me. You didn't have that velocity when you were testing. He said, well, I shot the longbow. And he was alone. It was dear to his heart. I said, is there a head threshold because of velocity? Like you found 650, and it's still holding. The 12 factor arrow with an 80-pound compound is still outperforming everything by far. Like pass throughs and other arrows going 14 and 20 inches into a test buffalo. But this is what he said to me. I don't know. Is that a great answer from a guy who did this for 30 years?
Yes.
That tells you a lot about him.
Yep.
It's a kick-ass answer. He said, I don't know. Let's test it. And I went, God, that's awesome. Like, that's the best answer you could ever have. He should say, nah. Like, if he acted like all the people on the message boards, hey, man, I shot 2 rhinos. Call me. He doesn't do that. He's still curious. Mm-hmm. He's got a list like this long of crap for us to do. Shooting through brush, shooting through weeds, shooting really far on animals and like a million things for the foundation to do. But he said to me, I don't know. Is that cool or what? That's
Very cool.
cool. Right.
That's when you know somebody's got a legit data set, when it's like
Right.
I can tell you about what I studied, but I can give you assumptions, I could give you theories, but I can't give you data on what I don't know.
Right.
So,
The study only stopped because he hurt his back. He broke his back. And he had rehab forever, and he was in a foreign country, and the healthcare wasn't good. It took a while to get to the U.S., and by the time it did, it's a long story. So he intended to grab a compound and repeat the whole thing. He may have found out that with a longbow, it's 650 grams.
mm-hmm.
With a compound, it's 12 factors, it's 595. He may have found that out because of the velocity. Okay.
Yep.
But he's also not going to say, yeah, sure, of course. Because he said this to me a bunch. Every time you do a test, you're going to have more questions than the answers. And he's right. Do not start testing stuff. This is my preaching to you, Matt. Just fart around with stuff you know and do things that are. Hello?
Oh,
There we
there
go.
you are. All right. Yep. You froze
Yeah,
for a second there.
we
You
both
said,
froze up.
you basically said, don't start testing things.
No, because it just gets worse. Like I've shot the crossbow now about 6 or 8 times, and I've got all kind of questions. I'm going to go try to answer them, but it didn't get better. It got, because I'm curious and I want to know. Part of that, Ed's had a really good impact on me with, saying stuff like, I don't know how to test it. Be careful. You're going to have more questions than answers. It's a great perspective to walk into some theoretical test, not try to prove, have a goal,
Yep.
but allow that it goes, oh God, it went over there. Don't just say, oh no. Nah. I'm very hard on the foam tester guys because they're using a target that eats kinetic energy via velocity. And the faster they go, the more draggier they are. And the slower they go, the arrow's just slower. So they all penetrate about the same. And these nitwits out there don't say it, but they'll shoot 3 different arrow masses into a target. They penetrate about the same. And they said, see, they all penetrate the same. And they don't say in foam.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't say it. They know exactly what they're doing. You're going to see it in the crossbow world and all that stuff. Somebody's going to shoot a 600 grain arrow into a foam target and a 400 grain arrow into a foam target. And they're going to penetrate about the same. And they're going to go, those guys are idiots. That's a foam test. It's a foam test. And when I talk to the vertical bow guys, it's real simple explanation. If that's the case, go watch 100 white-tailed deer kills on YouTube. You can get 4 different of those clips where it's just continuous kills,
Mm-hmm.
and watch the arrows. They're all different. They're all different. So if it's 100% into foam, and then you watch 100 kills on deer, and the performance is different, foam test, results. Deer test, results. Completely separate testing.
And that, that is something that if people are listening to this and changing their mind, or maybe, I don't know, just curious, right? Just try it.
Yeah, be curious. Be curious
Be
more
curious.
than worrying about fighting or changing your mind. Just
Because
be curious.
Right? I guarantee, a lot of us whitetail hunters, right? We've got setups to shoot does at 20 yards, and we're trying to shoot a whole bunch, at least here in Michigan, right? We got a lot of deer. We don't have the biggest bucks in the world, or density's the biggest bucks, but we've got tons of deer. So like, if I want to compare, if I'm a mechanical guy and I just want to, okay, you know what? I'm going to buy a Magnus Stinger or the single bevel, and the next doe kill I do, next doe hunt I do, just try it. Just see what you think, see how it performs, see the difference between what you've been experiencing. Because just like Ed, like, we don't have all the answers either. We've got experiences.
I don't have all the answers. I have less answers now than I've ever had. And I have a lot of math and a lot of data. I've got two subsets of information. I got 436 kills that were reported by people from my subscribers. The data is only as good as the data came in, but if you get 400 of them, you can find, trend lines, right?
Yep.
33% of all impacts in 436 shots hit a heavy bone.
Wow.
And that's a shoulder, humerus, pelvis, spine.
Okay.
Third of them. So we don't know how average or good the archers are. I know the broadheads, the setups, all that stuff. So then 436 is a pretty good subset of humanity. And 33% of them hit a heavy bone. That's kind of terrifying, bro. That's 1 in 3 for you, those of you with math degrees. That means every third animal you shoot at, you're going to hit a heavy bone.
I'll add this too, and we don't have nearly as much data, but my collective group of friends or relatives that have switched to fixed blades, no one is going back to mechanicals. And
no kidding.
And it's not just the heavy bone, like breaking through that. I would say it's even more so the a whitetail's reaction to being hit by a razor sharp fixed blade versus
they don't
mechanical.
Run.
They don't run or not. I mean, I've had gushers from these things where they're still 100 to 125, maybe 150 yards. A lot of us, especially the first time my friends or relatives have, be it compound or crossbow, like they thought they missed. We've had the reactions where we literally thought we missed. My first one was like, I shot a deer at 5 yards, 6 feet off the ground with a crossbow and a single bevel. And I seriously thought I missed him. And then they just tail flickers and they tip over. So that has been one of the even bigger eye-opening things is not just when plan B happens, but when plan A happens, how different the animal reacts to the shot versus
we see that
used to shoot mechanicals.
I've talked to a lot of people who shoot deer and the arrow hits the ground and the deer look away. Like they hear the arrow and they're like, what the hell is that? And then they kind of, and if you watch them, even if they run, they don't typically tail straight out, haul an ass.
Nope.
They tend to bound around and kind of run a little bit, and then generally they stop out there about 50 yards and go, what was, then they tip over, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So the advantage to that is, because I promise you blood trails are not controllable, the advantage to that is they just won't go as far. So should they not bleed for XYZ, about 15 different reasons, you know their direction of travel, you get a couple of dudes and go 70 yards, you're finding them. When they go 170 yards, people get wandering around, you just kind of get off track and your search area just gets really big. But I get those every year. I get a ton on my Instagram. I post pictures all winter of everyone else. I don't care about me. I'm fishing usually, but I want to see and promote helping other people. That's my deal. The minute that I stop helping other people, I'll turn the channel off. This is not, I don't give a hoot in the hell about me. If I never shoot another white-tailed deer, I'll be fine. But I get tons of emails and people say, man, I've been deer hunting for 10 years with a bow, never had a pass through, and I thought I missed. And then the deer went 35 yards and looked around and fell over. And I guess I didn't miss. Yeah, that's truly one of the, with a crossbow hauling ass and a really sharp broadhead. It's throwing so fast. Holy crap. Oh, the arrow's short or the bolt's short, so it didn't have time to whack them or anything. I mean, boy, that's awesome.
Yep. It has been. Both vertical and crossbow. And that is usually everyone's. And we've been shooting, I've been a big fan of the Stinger, although the Magnus single bevel, that's going to be.
That thing is wicked, dude.
Yeah, that's going to be in my
next
quiver.
Level wicked.
That's either going to be that might be the crossbow one, or I've got an elk hunt actually, my first elk hunt coming up in September. So it's going to be in something.
By the way, are you hiking yet?
Hiking?
Are you rucking yet?
Yeah. Hmm.
You better damn well ruck. I
Yep.
don't care if it's flat. Okay.
Yep.
You just need to be able to ruck. And by the time that hunt comes, my recommendation is you're able to go 4 miles, 7 days straight. So work yourself up
Yep.
because I've been on multiples of elk hunts, and the first two, I was not prepared for day 4.
Okay.
So in your training regiment, slowly ramp up, get up early, whatever you got to do, and get in 3 to 4 miles because you'll sit down in glass and screw around, have water. So it's not a pound, right, when you're elk hunting.
Yeah.
You'll probably do 10 miles a day, but if you're bow hunting, but I would get to the point that at least your body can handle 40 or 50 pounds in a ruck bag, and you can go 5 days straight and you're not dying,
Yep. Yeah.
and you'll be fine.
I've been doing some where I'll run a little, walk a little, run a little, walk a little with a weighted vest. And then I've got a 45-pound softener salt bag in my
Perfect.
actual backpack where then I'll do, and we've got, I mean, it's not super hilly where I'm at, but at least
You
enough to
just need the
where,
distance. You can't beat the hills and you can't beat the altitude, but I wouldn't run. I would put that 45-pound salt and I would try to get 5 miles. Like, you're not going to run. I did everything. The first elk hunt I went on, I lost 15 pounds. I was doing plyometrics, hit workouts, and I didn't ruck very much.
okay.
You know what I was good at? I was good at running from my house to the street about 40 times, and then I was done. Well, I promise you, the walk out of camp was further than that. So I looked good, had a flat belly, little 6-pack, strong. And day 3, I was smoked.
Yeah.
Like physically, my body said, what is this walking all the time thing? I'm used to 45 minutes of just getting your ass handed to you in a hot garage and then, work.
Yep.
So ruck it out, like
Okay.
really ruck, and you'll be fine. Don't worry about the elk as much. Worry about the hunt and getting to it and shooting it. Okay. Once the sumbitch is on the ground, I see all these elk hunting workouts where they're like squatting 400 pounds and crap. Getting the elk out, you can take a whole day. Get it hung up in bags, go back to the truck, eat a sandwich. You just got to get the elk now. It's over. But getting to the elk and getting an arrow into the elk, so much work. That's why I like deer hunting. But I like mule deer hunting. But I'm going elk hunting next year with a rifle, but that'll probably be my last one. All right, man. Well, I gotta
Cool,
go kill a
Troy.
pig. I got a
Yeah.
big fat pig. I'm trying to kill with my broadhead, and I got to go out there and chase him around.
Well, good
I
luck.
really appreciate you having me on, and I hope we helped the guys who called, and I hope we helped a lot of other people. We weren't trying to smack them around or make fun of them. Or
Nope,
their
absolutely
questions were
not.
fantastic. They were
Yep.
fantastic questions and very fair. And we were just hoping we'd give you some data and something to think about, for your future
And
to make you lethal.
I'll post a link down in the description of this to that data set, or at least the video where I did that one. If anybody wants to look at it, there's a Google Doc. You guys can download it. You can view it. You can do whatever you want with it. But yeah, Troy, no, thank you for hopping on and answering those
Anytime.
questions with me. Good luck on your pig hunt. And hey, let's do this again maybe in the next 30 days while I have
Okay.
a $17 subscription to Zoom. We won't have to mess with Teams anymore. You've got
Yeah.
30 days to
You
do
want to talk about? Let's
30
do it.
days to do one more.
Maybe we'll do rookie expo guy. What did Troy find out about crossbows?
There we go. That's perfect.
Yeah, that would be great. You have a good evening.
All right, you too, Troy. Thank you.
Yes, sir.